What's up, everybody? Hey, welcome back to the Chiss Ascendancy. Today we're getting in something a little bit different.
A little different.
Than usual.
Yeah, today we're going to talk about the legacy of Darth Bane. Darth Bane's one of my all-time favorite Sith, if not number one.
Yeah.
He's way up on Josiah's list too, I think.
Yeah. Bane is definitely my number one based on Legends material, if that makes sense. So, you know how it is out there if you're a Star Wars fan and you're like, what's real anymore now that Disney owns? But according to Legends, all that stuff that he's done in the past, he's definitely my favorite Sith. And so today we want to help unpack who he is, what he is, when he is, all that stuff. So let's just jump into it.
Let's do it.
Okay, so first thing we have on the docket, we have a little list of things to get to. But the first thing is, who is Darth Bane? And so without kind of going into his whole story, who is he and you know, that sort of thing. So who's Darth Bane?
From the beginning?
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to unpack his story, but just kind of, I guess, who he was, when he was.
So Darth Bane is significant to the Sith because, like we said in previous episodes, Palpatine is what Darth Bane envisioned for the Sith.
Yes.
When he rebuilt the Sith. So, Old Republic, there was like the Republic, but then there was also an empire that was run by Sith. And so they had an army of just regular folks, but the Sith Lords were the leaders, and there were hundreds and hundreds of them. You know, it wasn't just the two.
Right.
But Bane kind of unpacked it, and he spent a lot of time because he didn't like the system, and he came in a lot older than most of the learners would. And so he was kind of, you know, more of a free thinker and more of an independent individual than a lot of them would have been. And so he was starting to realize that because a lot of the students would gang up on the powerful masters, that gradually, generation by generation, the Sith Order was getting weaker.
Right.
And so he was saying, you know, they were acting as they should. They were acting in accordance with the dark side.
Yeah. You've got that craving for power.
Exactly. And it was the way they're supposed to be. They're supposed to, you know, just do whatever it takes to get that next ounce of power. But as the Sith Order overall was concerned, they were getting weaker because the weak would combine to defeat the actually strong ones, and then they would fight amongst themselves. And then at the end of the day, there's only a handful of weaks left. So
Bane's really, I guess, timeline-wise, Bane is the guy that plants the seed that 1,000 years, you know, a couple thousand years later is the rose that is Palpatine. And a lovely rose he is. But, so yeah, Bane is the guy that he really just rethinks the concept of what it means to be a follower of the dark side from the ground up. And so, before we unpack too much of his story, when is Darth Bane around?
So Darth Bane, when people hear the name Darth Bane, I think for me, at least a lot of people, they think kind of timeline with Revan, which is not true because he's a lot after Revan. Revan was around the time of probably the most powerful time of the Sith Empire. Yeah. Just because they actually had the Sith Emperor.
And I think that's part of the reason of it is because you had the Sith Emperor who could not be conquered. Yeah. So at least at that point there was a figurehead.
For 1,000 years.
Yeah. There was a figurehead up there that was just untouchable. But by the time Bane comes on the scene, according to this novel, and again, so it's back and forth. This is obviously Legends now. But this is doesn't say Legends because I bought it when it came out because I'm a real fan and a bandwagoner. But it says right here that 1,020 years before Star Wars A New Hope is Darth Bane Path of Destruction, which is the first of the Bane trilogy. So, you know, however long Revan was before that, at some point, the Sith way of doing things just kind of gets off track. And so, basically 1,000 years before Episode 4 is Darth Bane. And so that's when his story starts. And how, if one of the things that is important to us is we want to have some deep cuts there for the fans that have been around for a while, or for me, I love reading the books. I'm a huge fan of Audible. Both of us, you got your credits per month, and we're like, well, I can't spend a credit here because the Rise of Skywalker book
playing
comes out
Monopoly
here.
with books that you listen to.
Yeah, it's like, I'm saving up my credits for Park Place. But basically, the comics are the hardest thing for me because there's so much of it. Mm-hmm. But as far as novels and TV shows and movies and some of the comics, we stay up pretty much to date on things. Mm-hmm. And so for someone who is more of I've maybe seen the Clone Wars, but I've seen the movies. That's so many fans that we don't realize is there's so many fans that are at a surface level and they want to know more. And that's kind of our desires to help those people understand where everything falls. Sure. So for someone who's just seen the movies, and their question is, how is Darth Bane connected to the Star Wars that I know? What's your answer for them?
Okay, if we're just talking movies... and
I guess you could give the canon answer and the Legends answer.
Well, I was going to start with when, I think it's in Phantom Menace, they're talking about, we don't know if who Qui-Gon Jinn fought, Darth Maul, was the master or the apprentice, and Yoda says, only a master and an apprentice are there, only two, no more. And that's Bane's legacy. Yep. It's the title of this middle book right here. It's the rule of two. Yeah. Which is that there should always be a master to empower the dark side, or to embody the power of the dark side, and an apprentice to crave it. So his answer to all the infighting is basically kill everybody off. He literally kills off all the other Sith, except for himself.
And so basically starting from scratch, playing the long game, which for me personally, that's hard for me because it's like I want to see the results. Mm-hmm. But he was so passionate about the dark side, about the Sith coming to power, that he sets up the long game knowing he's not going to be around to see the end result. Mm-hmm. But the goal is, two, there should be no more, no less. One to embody the power and the other to crave it. And what it does is the apprentice only becomes the master when he or she is strong enough to overthrow the master. Mm-hmm. And then if you're not worthy and you challenge a master and you get whooped,
you die, and the apprentice is picked.
Yep.
It's pretty cutthroat.
So how Bane is connected to Star Wars that the average fan knows is, like Samuel was saying, he's the connection to why there's only two Sith. When you have in episode 1, the Phantom Menace, again, you've heard of Darth Plagueis, but you don't really know the inner workings. Just going by who we see in the movies. Master is Palpatine, apprentice is Maul. Maul dies, Master is Palpatine still. He takes Count Dooku under his wing, and now he's the apprentice. And the whole time as he meets Anakin and he sees his power,
he wants him.
He wants him to be the apprentice because he thinks he's that next level of Sith. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, Palpatine's goal, and it kind of gets twisted here towards the end because Palpatine is kind of selfish and he's like, I will live forever. It's for me, But Palpatine sees Anakin and realizes, oh, he's the next guy. Like he's the next tier of power, and so. By the episode 3, it's full-on pursuit. That's why you even have him telling Anakin to kill Dooku so that he can take that next step into the dark side. And all of that ladder is totally something that Darth Bane created. Yeah. So if you're a Star Wars fan, but you've only seen the movies, but you're kind of like, well, the new Clone Wars is here, and let's watch some of that, and let's watch, trying to get deeper in. Once Disney bought Star Wars, all these books aren't canon anymore, which sucks. They're still canon to me, but you know how that goes. So they decided, and I think the 5th or 6th season?
It was in the Lost Missions.
So the 6th season of Clone Wars to canonize Darth Bane. And so when there's a planet called Moraband, which is I think it's the same location as Korriban. It's just the way that it's been said.
Yeah, they said that it was Korriban in antiquity. So I think it's just their kind of way of like grasping it.
Yeah. the name had changed over time.
Hand of the Master George Lucas.
But basically, Yoda goes there to try to figure out what's going on with this Sith Lord that they can't locate.
Mm-hmm.
There's a shroud of the dark side has gotten in the way of things. So he's trying to lift that. He's trying to figure out what's going on so he can try to end the Clone Wars and restore the balance of things. And so he goes to Moraband, and the ghost of Darth Bane appears to him, or the spirit, or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's probably more akin to something like we'll see in a holocron. Thank you. Because Yoda's on purpose saying, I know this isn't you. You're dead.
Yeah.
And Yoda at this point is still just for himself, grasping the idea of staying around after, dying, maintaining individuality. And so Yoda acknowledges that it's not actually him, but we see him, and that's when they actually officially made Darth Bane himself and not just his legacy canon within the now Star Wars universe.
And so the look is a little bit different too.
Yeah.
Bane from these novels. Whoa, that was loud. Bane from these novels is bald and super tall. I mean, you can kind of see right here he's bald. I mean, you can't tell he's got a hood on, but you can take my word for it. Super tall, and oh man, maybe in this cover you can see him. In this cover you can see he's bald. It's supposed to be massive.
Yeah, I think he's
6'7",
6'8".
Yeah, something like that.
Thereabouts.
He's basically LeBron James. But basically, he's just this huge guy, and he's like, they talk about how tall he is, but also how like
muscular.
He's just a muscular, like the Dwayne The Rock Johnson Sith Lord. But in the Clone Wars, he's kind of more of a samurai.
Yeah, I think what they were doing was...
and maybe that's like an old Sith armor look or something.
Well, by the time we get around to Rule of Two, he's got the Orbalisk armor, and so he has to wear that face mask to keep the Orbalisk from encasing his face. And I think maybe that's what they were pulling from, because part of his iconic, especially in connection with the Jedi look, is him wearing full armor and a mask. And I think maybe without giving too much credit to the Legends, they wanted to give it a nod. And then that kind of manifested in like a samurai look.
It would be cool if, like you were saying, if the way that Yoda would have known him to be is only from Jedi record. So it would have been cool if when the spirit from the holocron, not from the holocron, but something similar to that, when it manifested itself, it would have been cool if the reason it has the mask is so you could intimidate Yoda by knowing who he was.
Well,
and he says, like, you're Darth Bane, you're the creator of the Rule of Two. Like, he knows who he is.
Yeah, Yoda for sure would. I mean, he just had, like, 7 lifetimes to study to study on the Sith history. But at the same time, I think it mentions in Dynasty of Evil, when Bane's really fixated on trying to make a Sith holocron, he makes his avatar, the person who represents him within the holocron. I think he makes that version of him with the Orbalisk armor so that it would be an intimidating look, and also that it would mask his identity, I think was his intention with that.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So within Star Wars that is canon, from the Disney purchase on, you've got the Rule of Two mentioned in Phantom Menace, which we now know is from Clone Wars, that Darth Bane created. And pretty cool, they even had a rendering behind the scenes of Clone Wars. They had a rendering because they were going to have Bane and Revan both talk to Yoda.
Oh, that would be cool.
It was going to, I don't know if it was cost and post-production or time or whatever, but just Bane was canonized. But because of the Rise of Skywalker Visual Dictionary, we know that Revan has been canonized because
what a sneaky way to do that. Too.
Yeah, one of the Sith legions of Sith stormtroopers were the Revan Legion or whatever. Yeah. And then Dedu and a bunch of other Sith, but that's neither here nor there. Trivia, do you know who voiced Darth Bane in the Clone Wars?
No.
Mark Hamill.
Oh, that makes sense, though.
Pretty cool.
Mark Hamill does all the good stuff.
Yeah. So, while we're still kind of young in this podcast, before we get a little too far into it time-wise, let's unpack the story of Darth Bane from Legends. And maybe, there's 3 books, but, depending on how detailed we want to get, the Path of Destruction, the first book, is really...
They're all really good, but the one that I could listen to, like, I think it's...
I've got to say, Path of Destruction...
10.5 hours, Path of Destruction, and I just blow through it, like, in a couple of days.
And I would say, canon, legends, doesn't matter. I think Path of Destruction is my favorite all-time Star Wars book.
It's up there with Plagueis.
Heir to the Empire for me, and Plagueis.
Plagueis and
all right there.
Plagueis and Path of Destruction for
also, Dark Disciple is really good, and I can't wait for Ascendancy, obviously. But anyways, so his story and legends. So obviously, we know that the Sith Lords take on a name. So Bane's not his natural name.
No.
If you didn't know that, now you know. So when we first meet Bane, where do we meet him? What's going on?
Yeah, so Dez was born into like a mining colony on Apatros. I think his mom died in childbirth, so his dad hated him, so that's kind of where that Seed of Darkness started. His name was Dez at the time, and so he was a Cortosis miner, which...
And I can't remember if Dez is his full name.
No, it's...
But they just call him Dez.
They just call him Dez. It's something else. I always want to say Desmond, and I know that is not it. I don't know why that's always stuck in my mind, but I just call him Dez. Because he's Dez for like 3 chapters, and then he's Bane for the rest of his life.
Right. I gotta look this up while you're doing this.
But anyway, so... You know, Dez and his dad obviously have this terrible relationship. They work in a Cortosis mine, which is already stressful enough. Old legends, Dessel. Cortosis was like a really
almost like
hard metal.
Yeah.
It's basically like impervious to lightsabers. It comes up in the old Thrawn trilogy. But now, under the new canon, it was touched on in Thrawn Alliances, the canon Thrawn trilogy, the middle book. That's like a fibrous material, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, to say it was like a valuable resource, and
basically the Sith and the Jedi are fighting, and both sides are buying.
Yeah, they both want this Cortosis, so
for their ships and armor and pretty much anything.
Yeah, it's just like even unrefined, it's like really, really strong. It's a really strong ore, and so that's why it's such a stressful job. Is because it's so strong, it takes like incredible brute force, you know, to get it out of there. So that's why he's bald, is because the stuff down there is toxic, and it just causes all the miners' hair to fall out.
And it talks about that basically, him and a bunch of jacked dudes are down there with just sledgehammers and jackhammers and drills, and they're just, I mean, it's just 12-hour days of just backbreaking labor. And it's a beautiful way that, you know, Drew Karpyshyn, the guy that wrote these novels, kind of, he has that hard background, but it also makes it very natural for him to be naturally strong. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when we meet him, he's mining, and some guy comes up here, and his drill breaks or something.
He gets in a fight.
His drill breaks, and then the other guy comes over and
tries to get on his turf, but it was because
the guy's mad at him.
His father had died. It was like the 5th anniversary or something of his father's death, and the other miner was friends with him, and because Dez's father hated him, then his father's friend hated him, and so he was just already drunk, and he just wanted to pick a fight. And then, long story short, Bane Shreks him. And then bites off his thumb.
Did you say Shreks him?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm here for it.
Appreciate it. Anyway, so he gets sent away for the day because...
He bites the guy's thumb off.
Yeah, because the guy starts trying to gouge his eye out.
Yeah.
And so, like, you see, like, glimpses into his force ability, but he doesn't know what it is. And so he just kind of thinks he has good instincts, and so he trusts it.
Yeah. Like, it's almost kind of like... he just has a foreknowledge of what's going to happen 2 or 3 seconds ahead of time, but it's just enough.
It's just really short precognition
to make a difference. So he's pretty much in timeout.
Yeah,
you know, they're saying, and I guess he's known to fight, and so they're saying, man, you can't be doing this. You can't keep fighting. You can't keep hurting people. So
because he doesn't lose, he just keeps beating the crap out of all the other miners.
Yeah,
so it's costing Oro Company a lot of credits.
Right. So they basically tell him, until this guy can go back to work, you can't go back to work, and we're not going to pay you in the meantime.
Right.
And so it's a sucky situation, too, because the company, this is so crazy because obviously we live on Earth, and it's like there's not multiple planets, but or inhabitable planets. But the company that's drilling for this ore, this metal, owns the planet. Mm-hmm. So to work there, you have to pay to live on the planet and for your food. It's really, they get you there and you can't really leave until you die. Yeah. Like, that's the way the finances are kind of set up, really. Yeah,
they have you set up like you're paying them for the food, you're paying them for the transportation, like to and from the housing, you're paying them for the housing. They own everything except for there's one Nemoidian that owns a bar.
Yeah. And so basically, you have enough money to go drink and gamble and sleep. Yeah. And that's pretty much
it. And even the gambling's regulated so that nobody wins too big and gets out of there.
Yeah. So Bane basically at this point is like, screw it, I'm going to go gamble because he's not allowed to go work. He can't do anything else. So he goes and gambles. Long story short, again, the Force abilities are there where he's kind of, they're playing Sabacc, the game that Han Solo beats Lando in to win the Millennium Falcon. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of seeing...
He has a feeling he's just going to win big that night. Yeah. He's like, this is my night. I don't care how long it takes. He's just like, he knows that he's going to win big. Yep. And he's been able to trust his instincts long enough that he's like, frick it. I'm here. Yeah. I'm here for it.
And the thing is that it's weird because if I'm remembering correctly, it's not like he knows what he's going to get. Mm-hmm. He just knows to trust this is the hand to go in or this is the hand to back out. So long story short, he wins big. Yeah, he keeps just hassling this one ensign. And
he's just messing with the Republic Army. And so Dez is already like predisposed to not like the Republic Army just because, I don't know, he feels like they're using Oro Company and like they want to, basically do business, but they don't care anything for the miners. So he's like, what about me?
Yeah. I mean, imagine care less. Yeah, imagine you're doing a job that feels thankless, and then the guys that are benefiting from your job come in and are like poking fun at you. Yeah. He's like already irritated with these guys. And so basically he wins big and the Republic soldiers are they feel like he's cheating, basically. Which, I mean, he is, but he isn't. Yeah. So they meet him in a back alley and they're like, we're gonna show you what's up. And basically, Bane murders the guy. Yeah. And so he realizes, I'm screwed. Like, there's no way off this planet. Mm-hmm. I just killed a Republic soldier, and so I'm going to prison. Yeah. And so basically, he goes back into the bar, and Groshik's the name of the guy who owns the bar, Nemoidian. He's like, what have you done, Des? You made a big mistake at this time. I don't know, he turned into water there at the end. Like, get you out of here.
But Groshik is like...
He's really cool.
He's very cards close to the vest kind of guy, and so he has contacts with both the Sith and the Republic. He's like, you can't go to the Republic for obvious reasons. He's like, do you really mean what you said about the Sith? Because Des was kind of just to get under the ensign's skin saying how he thinks the Sith might have a better agenda. Yeah. He's like, I don't know. And then Groshik's like, you have to really mean this. And so anyway...
We get you out of here. Crazy fast.
You still get two. Anyway, so they send him off, and he ends up being a soldier in the Sith army for, I don't know, a couple of years. But he works with a group, and they call themselves the Gloom Walkers. They used to be like specialists. They were just like an okay kind of group. Nothing outstanding about them. But under his leadership, and he really wasn't even in charge. He was like second in command, but he was really in charge when stuff started to go down.
They make it very clear that Darth Bane, Dez at the time, is not in charge, but when the heat of battle's going on...
Yeah, the commander's looking to Bane because he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, the guy, it's typical what everybody deals with in a lot of workplaces and stuff where there's a guy in charge, but when the chips are down, the guy freaks out, so Bane is like... Here's what we're doing. And, they just kill it. And so basically, something happens where the Sith, the actual Sith in charge of
So the Sith Lords want to basically put the Doom or the Gloom Walkers in like a suicide mission. And Dez is saying, hey, this is a mistake. He can still move at a different time and get this done. Mm-hmm. But his commander was too scared to stand up to the Sith Masters. Right. And so Dez basically knocks him out and says, if anybody feels like they can't follow me after what I just did, I'll, surrender command to my, right-hand man and we'll move on. Nobody does it. And so they move out, and he does some crazy Force stuff. I think after he'd been like flashbanged, still sniped 6 people in like half a second. Just crazy, ridiculous stuff. And so he gets court-martialed basically when they get back because the commander had gotten free.
And it's pretty cool because you're like, frick, he's going to get in trouble. And really, on the way to the court-martial, it's really he gets called in because the actual Sith Masters realize there's no way this guy isn't
Force
tapping into the Force.
And there's one in particular, Kopej, who really wants Bane to succeed because he senses the raw power. And he's talking to the other Sith Masters, and he's like, we need him. There's no way. This guy's way too powerful to be left alone. He's like, he might become the most powerful of us all.
Yeah. And it's crazy because some of the Sith Masters also sense the flaws in the plan of there's not enough Masters, there's a ton of students, but nobody's ever getting to that next level.
Yeah.
But at the same time, nobody wants to rock the boat except for Bane.
Yeah. Who
just obliterates the boat. So basically, Bane goes to Korriban and he starts training, and he's very, very strong in the Force.
Yeah. I think in his first time in his real duel, he gotten destroyed, just dueling sabers, but then broke through the other guy's Force barrier and just choked the life out of him. Just in a training exercise, killed another apprentice.
And so, at that point, man, I can't remember what that guy's name was, but he was a Trandoshan.
He was a McCurth.
What is the McCurth?
It's like a Trandoshan, but it's different.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, Sith Bosk, similar at least, and so he kills, I can't remember that character's name for my life, but he kills this guy, and all of a sudden he's got this target on his back where it's like, oh, this is the new dude. But for whatever reason, in that moment, once he passes that threshold and kills and really taps into the darkness, he just backs away.
He's scared of his potential, and at the same time, he has a revelation that he used the Force to kill his dad in his sleep. Like, he used the Force to induce his dad's heart attack. And so he's trying to deal with the fact that he actually killed his dad, and he killed this other, apprentice for really no reason other than the fact that he's embarrassed.
That was the guy's name.
And so he was just really scared of himself, basically, and didn't want to want to give himself fully to the dark side.
And so he's also the kind of guy that he's old enough. So you got to remember, just like the Jedi, the Sith trained from a very young age. So he comes in at 25.
Yeah, he had to have been in his mid to late 30s.
30s?
Or sorry, 20s.
I was like, but
early 30s.
Yeah,
probably.
he gets somewhere between 25 and 35. He enters the Sith Academy, probably closer to like 26, 27. And everybody else there is like in their late teens and already more powerful because they've been at the Sith Academy longer.
The Sith Academy on Korriban was where all the most powerful. There were a bunch of different training areas, but this is where the cream of the crop.
If you've got potential,
it's like West Point at the Sith Army.
You go to Korriban so that we can send you out to fight the Jedi. And so they've been training longer. They have a deeper understanding of the dark side to begin with. But when Bane walks through the door, he's more powerful. But he's completely new to the things. And so you start to see his ideology be against the people who are already teaching there because he wants to learn from the holocrons, and he wants to learn from the different things, the ancient texts and things like that. And they're saying, we don't do that anymore, Bane. And they're pushing back against him, and he's saying, if these guys are legends, if these guys are the people that we look up to, and these are the pinnacle of our Sith past, why are we not learning from these guys? So he really starts to isolate himself.
Funny enough, one thing that is a really isolating factor for him is that he doesn't think at this point the Sith are the Brotherhood of Darkness. They're trying to mimic like a Jedi-esque existence.
We're all in this together.
Yeah, where everybody's equal, and he's like, but we're not. He's like, I just killed this other guy. He's like, we weren't equal. And so he's basically saying they're powerful and they're weak. And he gets really fixated on the fact that they stopped using the Darth title. They just went by Lord so-and-so. And he was like, what's the Darth title? And they're basically saying that was one Sith who had proclaimed that he was more powerful than the rest. And they said they stopped using it because it put a target on that guy's back for the Jedi, like an easy one to pick out. But really, they were just irritated with the fact that this one person said they were best than the rest.
And so he, while he's still training and he's kind of in that weaker, he peaks early, and then you have this long valley in that first book where he's, as the reader, especially the first time I read it, I was like, come on, man, put yourself together. So you're waiting this long time, and he even gets challenged by another apprentice, the Zabrak. I can't remember.
He challenges the Zabrak because he was like, he knew that everybody saw that he was getting weaker, and he was like, I got to do something about this. Yeah. So he just challenged him just to kind of shake things up, and gets destroyed.
He gets just taken to task.
Yeah.
And so now he's an outcast even more than before.
Yeah, he's just a pariah.
And
nobody
so
wants to touch him. He's
doing his own thing, and no one's paying attention to him. None of the masters are paying attention to him. And in the long run, we realize, obviously, hindsight's 20/20, but in the long run, it's the best thing for him. Because now he gets all this time to focus on whatever he wants to grow at his own pace. And then he starts having just this rapid growth that's just like, yeah, I can do this. I'm going to do what I want to do. And because he's not this star pupil anymore, I'm going to go and read these texts. I'm going to go and study the ancient ways. And he makes an alliance with Githany, who's this super powerful
She's a defective Jedi who had a thing for the dark side, and she was spurned by her master, and so she was like, frick this. And she basically gives information to the Sith about where the Jedi are at, and then goes to the Sith Academy on Korriban.
Yep. So, long story short, Bane just starts having revelations. He just starts having, things just start clicking for him. And so he comes back, and he says, I'm going to challenge so-and-so. I can't remember that Zabrak's name. But imagine Darth Maul with yellow skin.
Yeah.
And this guy's the cream of the crop. This guy is like the strongest in the Sith Academy.
Yeah.
Like throughout the book,
they were saying that
like,
maybe he's the Sithari. Like
so the Sithari is kind of almost like the chosen one, but for the Sith. And they're saying, like, one of the things they talk about is, why isn't this guy going to the battle yet? Why isn't this guy being sent off yet? And I think they were, and that's kind of some of the things that Bane was frustrated with too, is like, do we have these people who are ready, and they're just holding him back?
Yeah, I think Cortis was just saying that he wasn't ready. That he had too much pride, that, like, he had a lot of skill, but he wasn't refined enough to really go head-to-head with some Jedi Masters.
And so, Bane comes back, the same guy who just whooped him, and says, I challenge so-and-so to a duel. And just, long story short...
Yeah, he's basically picking him apart the whole time, and what he does is, that guy had never been in an engagement with anybody long enough to really test his endurance, and so Bane didn't want to just beat him, he wanted to humiliate him. And so he basically made it look like he was just good enough to keep the Zabrak at bay until he got tired, and then just, I think, broke his arm and, knocked him out. And
it's just, like, the book describes, like, thing after thing after thing that he does to just wreck this guy. But he also lets him live.
Yeah.
And so that's a big thing. Sirak, there you go. So, throughout the rest of the story, Githany is like, why didn't you kill him?
Yeah, because Githany teamed up with Bane initially because that was the only way she saw getting past Sirak.
Right. And now that he's been beaten but not killed, she's like, oh, maybe you're the weak one.
Yeah, now she's like, he's even more dangerous because he's embarrassed, and he's kind of a known unknown. They don't know when he's going to try and strike, and so...
And so, at this point, Bane's like, there's nothing I can learn here. You guys have nothing for me. So...
He goes to the Valley of the Dark Lords.
Yeah, first. He walks out.
He thinks there's stuff hidden there for him because he's always looked to the texts. That's where he got his knowledge. That's what set him apart, and so he thinks that there are still, the spirits.
There's things to be learned. And so he walks out basically across the Sahara Desert into the Valley of the Dark Lords to learn more from those who have passed on before him. Goes there.
Finds nothing.
Yeah, he's like, this is a waste. And so he comes back, and he's very, very... tired.
Yeah, he's barely alive.
And so I can't remember exactly what happens after that before he leaves the academy.
Before he leaves, he gets in a big verbal fight with Darth, the one who's the headmaster. I said his name earlier.
Cortis.
And so Cortis is basically saying, you can stay you know, because he thought he was going to get in trouble for beating the crap out of Sirac.
Yeah.
Because Sirac was Cortus's favorite. And so, you know, he's saying, you know, you can stay, but you can't train with Githany anymore, and you can't go into the records. And so Bane is looking to the past. Cortus is trying to point him to the future, or so he believes. And so Bane's going to try and one-up him by proving there's still stuff out there in the Valley of the Dark Lords, and so they kind of have a split.
Mm-hmm. And so once Bane goes there and comes back, he's done with the Academy.
Yeah, he's decided...
There's nothing more he can learn
there.
So he leaves. And I think he takes Cortus's ship.
Here's the thing. He declares himself Darth Bane. He comes back and meets with Cortus, and he says, Lord Bane. He's like, it's Darth Bane.
Yeah.
And so basically he said F you to everybody in the whole room.
Yeah,
and stole the guy's ship that was a gift. He had literally just gotten it and left.
Yeah. And so he gets there, he leaves, and basically he goes and discovers the holocron of Darth Revan.
Darth Revan's holocron.
And basically just learns so much stuff from it.
Yeah. But before this, it is important to note that he kills Sirac and Sirac's two friends before he leaves.
Oh, yeah. I just totally forgot about that.
Yeah, just kills him. They try to trap him in the library, and he just kills him.
Yeah.
Him and Githany.
And so he kills them, gets in the ship, leaves, goes and basically feasts on this holocron from Darth Revan.
Yeah.
And it's that moment that he realizes...
That's when he starts to formulate the rule of two.
We've got to burn it all down. And this is really the catalyst. This is really the place where Bane becomes Bane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he comes back, he's told us at the Academy, I'm Darth Bane, this and this and this. But the real creation, the birth, the whatever you want to call it, the trial by fire, the christening, whatever you want to call it, this is when it happens. So he discovers Darth Revan's holocron, and they talk, of course. And really, that's the moment where he decides we've got to go.
Right.
We've got to start from scratch.
That's where Bane decides that he knows better than everyone else because he has all these suspicions. But hearing what Revan had to say about the dark side, he was like, "Yes, this is what I've been saying."
Yeah, and he realizes if this guy is up on our totem pole, and me and him are agreeing, and nobody's agreeing with me, that means that nobody currently is agreeing with Revan, which means they're wrong.
Yeah.
And so, as he's getting ready to leave, Kasim, who
was the Blade Master at the Sith Academy, he was also probably the Sith Master that Bane was closest to because he trained him in secret when he was going to fight Sirac.
Right. So, at this point, he says, hey, you can still be a part of us, whatever. And Bane says, all right, well, if you can beat me, then I'll join.
Yeah.
Basically. And
at this point, Bane already thinks he can beat him, and so he's actually considering him as an apprentice. And then Kasim says something.
Maybe this is the
guy.
guy.
Oh, no, not this guy.
Yeah. So he beats Kasim.
Who was the best fighter that the Sith had at the time.
Right. So at that point, you already know he's already top dog. So he goes back to the planet where the Jedi and the Sith are at this on Ruusan. And basically, whoever wins Ruusan is going to break the back of the war.
Right, because all the Sith are there and a lot of the Jedi are there.
Right. So long story short, Bane learns of a ancient Sith war tactic, a ritual called a thought bomb. And basically what it is a ritual that requires all these people to join together and create this massive amount of force energy, really.
Yeah, it's basically like incarnate dark side energy.
Yeah, and so he tricks Lord Khan, who is the leader of the Brotherhood of Darkness, into, hey, this is how we're going to destroy the Jedi. And for whatever reason, Khan goes for it.
Khan's desperate at this point. He needs a win.
Yeah.
And Bane convinces him. So the thing about the thought bomb is it kills everybody within the blast radius that has any connection to the Force. And it not only kills them, it actually, like, it's worse. It traps their souls in that bomb forever. So they're basically just tormented for eternity. And so Bane convinces Khan, though, that the Sith would be strong enough in the dark side to be safe from it. Right.
And so they get there, and then Githany starts to realize what's going on.
She tries to get out.
She tries to get out. It's too late. And the bomb goes off, and it kills Khan and everyone else in the
All
Brotherhood.
the Brotherhood of Darkness.
Githany gets destroyed even though
And
she's
then,
running
like,
away.
100 Jedi.
And a ton of Jedi, including Lord Hoth, which is the big deal. And so from then, he walks out into the field and is like, all right, we're back at square one. Yeah. But he feels so liberated because he gets to just go forward instead of having to keep looking back and worry about what's going on behind him.
Well, and the thing is, like, at this point, he's very proud of himself because, one, he's eliminated all the Sith, but at the same time, he's eliminated all the Jedi's memory of him as well because they think he would have died in the thought bomb.
Yep. So he goes completely undercover, and so he's a no one again, and he can start planting the seeds of the Sith. And it's crazy because obviously on the desk we brought the Darth Bane trilogy books today, but of course Commander Cody, Commander Gree, 2 clones that were a big part of executing Order 66, and it's amazing to me that nearly 1,000 years earlier, Bane's the one that sets that plan up, and Revenge of the Sith is really the culmination of
Bane's genius.
Of Bane's genius. And so that's just in this first book. So if you're a reader or if you want to know more about Star Wars, or maybe you have a commute and you think, yeah, I could get into listening to some Star Wars. They're very high production value, I think. It's one guy that does a really great job with the different cast members and stuff of the book and their sound effects and stuff. So if you are an audiobook kind of person, this is available on Audible. If you're a reader, then you can get it obviously off of Amazon or whatever. But if you're a Star Wars fan and you want to know more about some of the people who are creating the path that all of the movies that you've seen, Bane's the guy, really.
Yeah.
So, wrapping this episode up, and I'll kind of let you lead this because I kind of took over there for a second, but when do you think we'll see Bane again? Will we see him again? And I think we will, but
it's hard to say.
Where do you think it takes place?
If we get the Old Republic trilogy they talked about, I think he would be a great icon to center on, him or Revan. Those are kind of like the leading Old Republic Sith in my mind. I don't know if we'll get any new books. They might do like a Drew Karpyshyn reboot, like what they did with Timothy Zahn and Thrawn, but I don't know if Drew Karpyshyn's going to want to play that game. Maybe Disney Plus. I don't think he's going to fit into the Kenobi series. He's obviously not going to fit into Mandalorian.
Right.
Maybe comics. I think comics or maybe an Old Republic series.
Yeah. And it's rumored that there's going to be a High Republic trilogy that comes out, which is basically the prime of the Republic, which is when Yoda's in his heyday, when he's only 200 or 300. And so...
A young man.
In my mind, I think, oh, come on, that's not far enough back to see Bane. But because he's been canonized, but this story has not been canonized. So technically
they could fit it in. They could fit it in there. I mean, it wouldn't be like the classic timeline, but it's plausible just because the only thing that we know for sure canons-wise about Bane is Rule of Two and that he was on Court Bane at one point.
Yeah. So I hope that makes sense. So that's kind of the backstory. So again, everything that we've said is really just in this book.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got Rule of Two, which is him and his apprentice that he chooses. I don't want to say her name because that's kind of a spoiler, but I mean, I guess you could look it up and see it. But all this stuff going on. So there you have it.
Anyways, our neighbor's really eager to mow his lawn, and we've been trying to shoot for like 3 hours today, so we're just going to let him win this battle. But remember, the only family you have here is me.
May the Force be with you. Catch you guys next time. What's up, guys? Hey, we hope you liked this episode of the Chiss Ascendancy. If you enjoyed it, please like this video, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when you get a new video, and then also follow us on Instagram at Chiss Ascendancy Podcast. You can also find an audio-only version on Spotify and Apple Podcasts at the Chiss Ascendancy. We'll see you next time.